Okay, today artists, we are going to work on values and color. I have a nice spring crabapple tree that we're going to paint with. I'm going to start by putting a little bit of water. First, this is the value sketch that I've created for our spring tree, our crabapple tree with nice green grass, which I would love to see. Soon enough, we will have those colors. Put in some clean water. Now remember, there aren't a lot of, it's not a fully loaded tree with a lot of leaves. So there will be gaps in the leaves. You want to leave some spaces for the birds to fly through. So don't make it a solid tree. See how the paint will go where the water is. So if I don't want paint somewhere, don't put water there, and it probably won't go there unless you push it there with your brush. I'm painting my lightest pink right now because I want to be able to save that color. So if you have a nice light color that you like, put that in early on. It's very hard to get that back once you cover that area with another color. I can always add more if I need to. But this will help me save the space. I'm going to put some right into those tree trunks. This helps me save the space for where I want my blooming crabapple tree to go, all those flowers. Beautiful flowers. Now I discovered while I was looking at my photo reference, which I'm using a photograph, that there were actually two crabapple trees in this picture, and the trunks are directly behind the others. So I moved the farther away tree, the one in the distance, I moved it over to the right so we can actually see the trunk a little bit. So that's back there. Now, so that is a good shape for my tree. So using my permanent rose, which was the same color, I'm going to go in, it's still wet. Let's throw some color in right now in those darker areas. Using my value sketch as a reference, I want to save some spaces. So put in a few dark colors right now. It'll make it more interesting. It'll be a soft transition, except for there. That's a hard transition. If you want to soften that area up, what I mean by transition is the edge. So since this is mostly still wet, once I put color on there, it'll just blend in a nice smooth edge. But just like we were talking about before, if there was no water there, like on what I'm painting right now, you're going to get a harder edge. So remember, water is important in your watercolor painting. I want to save some of that light. There we go. So that feels like a good place to start for me. Now remember, here's where that patience comes in. I have to let that dry. Put a little bit more value in there. Okay. Pick up some of that. Okay, our tree is dry. So now I'm going to go on to a different area and I'm going to do the sky behind. One of the reasons I wanted to get the tree in first is so I knew where I wanted to put those branches. I'm going to take my eraser and erase any extra pencil lines that are sticking out into the sky. Unnecessary before I paint. Once the paint goes on, it's a lot harder to dry, to eliminate those lines. Okay, so the same thing. I'm going to put some water I'm going to put some water in on my paper. Now, wherever I put water, remember, paint will go. So if you want to put clouds, don't put water there. Save the white of your paper to create your clouds. So there's a dry area there. I don't know if you can see the reflection. There's a dry area there. I'm going to come right down to the base here. Let's start on this side. Now, it's pretty wet right there. As I come closer to my tree, I want to be a little bit more careful. It's okay if it overlaps some, but the reason I did my tree first is so that I could save some of those pink areas. Let's see how we do. Add a little bit more color. If I add a little bit more color, it makes it a little darker, right? A little bit more pigment, so that will make the light of my tree show up more. If I have the dark blue around there, I'm going to tilt this just a little bit. It's not a large space, so it's a little easier to come back in. Now, while I'm painting my blue, I am also painting the shape of my tree, right? So keep that in mind. There we go, that's a better value because the darker blue will help the pink show up. Okay. Let's put some of that right in here. Don't worry if it's not perfect, that's okay. We're going to go in with some darker pink to cover some of that up. Okay, now my side over here probably dried, so I'm going to get a little bit more water. Oh, give it a little bit more flow. I'm sure it dried. Okay, here we go. Second drop, there we go. Again, a little bit wet. Now, this is a hard edge because that is where cloud will be. Let's see, there's some water. Let's cover that up just a little bit. I'd rather have sky coming right up to my tree. There's another cloud coming in. I have my green ready. It's a nice spring green. I'm using some hookers. Green with some yellow. Maybe gamboge. It's not going to be a solid green, right? Look at, there's different, you can have different areas. Some areas are yellow, some areas are greener. Depends, you know, most lawns are not perfect. I'm going to avoid this a little bit. Again, I can go darker there. See what we got here. We get pretty wet in there, that's fine. I'm going to try not to paint where my pink is. Okay, now I can be a little wilder. Here we go. I did not wet this area first. It's not a large area. And I have plenty of paint ready to go. My shadows I will do afterwards. Shadows are very important, but those can be put in afterwards. Let's put a little bit more yellow over here. It's kind of fun. Pick up some of that color so you don't get blossoms. in the line of the landscape there. Let's add some other colors in there. You can put information, you could keep it simple. Again, that is kind of up to you. Let's come back here, add more if we want. Maybe there's another tree here. Oh, let's put another pink tree over there. This little crabapple off in the background somewhere. Maybe there's crabapple back there. Now on this side, while I'm painting my landscape, I'm making sure that I'm also painting the light areas of my tree. So on this side where there's lighter value of the tree, I can literally carve out different petal shapes and leaf shapes with my background. I'll have to make a few bushes in there, make it look better. The tree's dry. What if we want to put a different kind of tree here? I'm making them lighter, it's farther away. They'll be lighter in value than the trees that are closer up. They will have shadows, so when we get to the shadows, we'll put some shadows over there. Alright, there you go. Now, back to our crabapple tree. Okay, so I have an idea where I want my trunks. You can go darker with watercolors simply by adding more of the same color, more pigment, less water. So that's my permanent rose. If you want to tone it down a little bit, I could put a little bit of green in there. That will make it not so bright everywhere. I'm going to put a little bit of water in some of my light areas. Now I'm only going to cover a fraction of what I've already done. I like what I've already done. I don't need to paint the whole thing again. Save those lights. Okay? Here we go. Dark here, so let's get some darks in there. Let the water take it. Now because I'm going darker, I can cover up some of those other areas. Now I'm being a little bit more particular about my brush strokes. A little bit more. It's pretty dark here. I added a little green. That's what toned down that red, so it's not so bright everywhere, right? Can't have the bright intensity everywhere all the time. Those are my branches or trunks, or whatever you want to call them. I guess they're trunks until they become small, and then they become branches. So that's pretty dark over there. But it doesn't all have to be the same. So I'm keeping an eye on my value sketch to help me not forget what was my plan. I had a plan. Let's see how close we can stick to it. More pink on this side, so. Now I'm going to be a little bit more cautious as I get down to the landscape. Don't want everything to blend together. Sometimes I do, not in this case. Let's see, oh good, it's dry. Not everywhere, we'll see what happens here. Add a little water, soften up some of those edges. Not every edge needs to be hard, right? Let's keep it going over here for a minute. How dry is that? And it doesn't all have to be just light and dark, right? Let's get some midtones in there. Try and get at least 3 values. Make it interesting. Values are your lights and your darks. Different edges also will make it interesting. Got some hard edges because it was dry when I applied the paint. Softer edges when it was wet. Working my way around this tree here. Let's get a little darker in here. Yeah, a little bit more interesting here. Let's change that shape just a little bit. Be careful not to add too much green to your red because that will dull it down very quickly. You want to tone it down but not make it an unpleasant color. Let's change that just a little bit. There we go. Alright, let's keep going over here. In the dark. I'm not using a lot of different colors. I'm still using my green with my permanent rose to get this nice, rich, dark red. Many times a painting is way more interesting when you use fewer colors. You don't always need to use a full 25, 30 different colors. Let's make this a more interesting shape. Hanging down. That's a big branch hanging down. Now, make this a little darker up in here. Remember, when you're not sure what to do, that's a good time to stop. But I do feel like that needs a little bit more color. There's too white. Almost. Alright. Alright, let's think about those trunks. So, I'm going to keep adding my permanent rose. I'm going to use my Hooker's Green. Makes a very nice dark color. But let's go one more step and let's see how that looks. So make it a little bit darker, more purple. I added some French ultramarine blue. Now, some areas are wet, so that'll bleed a little bit, and that is fine with me. A little bit wider. Roll up my sleeve so I don't get my arm in there. got this one, don't forget my one in the back, right? Do that at the same time. That down here. Now we'll work on this in a sec. Don't get carried away with your branches. It's really fun, but very quickly you can be overworked. Okay, now I want to move fairly quickly. I'm going to put those shadows in while my trunks are still wet, because they're connected, right? So yes, it's going across the grass, so it's going to be a different color, but you can still connect them. So here we go. So let's start with that one in the back. Oop, too much. Too much pigment made it difficult to manipulate. Now, if you look at that shadow, it's coming towards us in one area. I'm looking at my reference. I'm going to have to go behind my tree. I might have to fix that, but it's important that it goes behind there. Shadows will be darker as they're closer to the object, and they get lighter as they go away. But even if something is coming towards you, it's good to paint your shadows horizontally. Because if I painted it straight line coming down, it's not going to look as good. Make interesting shapes. Ooh. Well, remember we had some pink there? Let's put some of that pink back in my shadows. There's some pink coming from that tree. Right? There's some fallen petals in there. You can put different colors in. There we go. Let's keep that shadow going, because it comes out, breaks up a little bit. There's holes in the shadow as well, right? Because as our shadow goes up, the branches are thinner, so there's more holes, there's more space. This should be more connected and going off the page. I like that better. I'll make it go a little bit lighter as it starts going off the page.